I am very happy to welcome you to this launch seminar of this report, Localizing SDGs in the Eastern Partnership countries. My name is Tove Ahlström and I'm the CEO of the think tank Global Utmaning. I'm also very happy to be joined by such an excellent lineup of speakers from Belarus, Georgia, Ukraine, EU and Sweden. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank Swedish Institute for making this sustainable leadership program possible, on which this report is based. We are almost 2 years in the decade of action, where comprehensive and transformative actions is needed to create the conditions for the sustainable future in accordance with the 2030 Agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. For us at Global Utmaning, we believe that cities, municipalities, regions are especially important in this critical age. With this report, we therefore hope to inspire local action and provide recommendations for how to better support local stakeholders working with SDGs. And our hope at Global Utmaning is to be able to continue our work promoting localizing SDGs in the Eastern Partnership countries and elsewhere. Now, I would like to hand over to today's moderator, Joel Ahlgren, who is the Program Director for Sustainable Cities at Global Utmaning and Project Manager for this Sustainable Leadership Program. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you so much, Tove, for introducing today's seminar. Thank you for being here. And dear all, I am very happy to be able to introduce you to this seminar. We are very happy to share with you today the report that builds on the Sustainability Leadership Program that Global Utmaning has implemented in the Eastern Partnership countries, Georgia, Belarus and Ukraine for the past 2 years, with the support of the Swedish Institute. The aim of this report is, as Tove said, to provide insights to both national decision makers and international donors on how to better support the 2030 implementation on subnational levels in the Eastern Partnership countries. And we have a very interesting seminar prepared for you today. And the main topic that we will address is how do we translate global goals into local action? And how can we better support cities, regions and municipalities to use the goals as strategic frameworks for sustainable development? And to help me set the stage to this session and this seminar, I would like to introduce and invite to stage Krista Campus, who is a senior advisor to Global Utmaning and has co-managed the leadership program together with me. And I would also like to introduce Alexandra Khalim, who is a researcher at Uppsala University and who have contributed to this report as well. Welcome. And I would like to begin with you, Krista, because you have been working with us and in the concept of the leadership program for quite some time. And I would like to ask you could you please explain from your perspective, why is it important to have these leadership programs that allows for transnational exchanges of experiences when working with the SDGs in general and with localizing the SDGs in particular?
Thank you, Joel. Good morning, everyone. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me. Very good question, Joel. I think that the most important is that SDGs are local. It has been estimated that around 65% of the SDGs targets and indicators cannot be achieved without involvement of local and regional governments. So in that sense, cities and municipalities, they play a very important role when it comes to SDGs realization, because they are the ones who are putting them into practice. But it also means that achieving SDGs require very deep transformations at the local level. And I see the added value of this leadership program from, let's say, three perspectives. The first is the system approach the leadership program can take. Leadership program is a very good place where you can strengthen the capacities of the local and regional governments to integrate the 2030 agenda on the local level as a general framework for strategic thinking, planning, co-creation and budgeting. So I think this focus on system approach is extremely important, and leadership program definitely contributed and will contribute to that. Secondly, synergy. The program is establishing, and our program established as well, a dialogue between different levels of government within a country, but also it gives an opportunity to network, learn and share experiences between, for example, the Eastern Partnership countries and also with international peers. We had many Swedish peers, cities who participated in our program. So the leadership program provides a shared meeting place that brings together wide variety of actors who could maybe not otherwise or would not otherwise meet to work together to implement SDGs at the local level. And by that, I think the leadership program helps you to break a silos when it comes to multilateral cooperation and creates opportunities for, let's say, direct dialogue between international organizations and local governments to work on Agenda 2030. And third, I would say coherence. Sustainability leadership program was co-created with already existing organizations and partners like Swedish embassies in Ukraine, Georgia and Belarus, the United Nations Economic Committee for Europe, UNDP national offices in these three countries, but also together with the local government and housing associations. So the program took into account and complemented existing sustainable development projects and initiatives in these three Eastern Partnership countries. And I also think that the program truly increased the skills on development of the SDGs-based urban strategies and action plans, and also tools for communication and citizens' engagement. And last but not least for today, the program flexibility. I think the program was created and designed based on the needs of the target groups. We really assessed and analyzed and asked what is needed, what are the challenges. Report is one part of this analysis. And flexibility also in terms that training topics were updated constantly throughout the implementation of the leadership program according to the suggestions from the participants. And I think it is also a very important part when it comes to designing the trainings and capacity building programs.
Thank you so much, Krista. And you're touching upon a thing here that has been very visible throughout this program, and that is the COVID pandemic, in the sense that this program was planned to be a physical leadership program with meetings. However, it's become digital. And in order to help us, both me and Krista, but also the participants and the wider network of stakeholders we have been working with, to get a sense of how are our countries, Georgia, Belarus and Ukraine, working with SDGs. We work together with Alexandra, and we're very happy to have you with us here today to do a desk study on what is the current state of SDG implementation in these three countries, in order to have a baseline from which to work on. When we talk about localizing SDGs, we talk about cities and regions and municipalities working on subnational levels to work with SDGs. However, we need to understand what are the national preconditions for such initiatives. So Alexandra, you've been providing feedback and insights to us in a number of different occasions, and now in this report as well, on the state of SDG implementation and 2030 agenda work in these three countries. Could you please give us an overview and highlights from how are Georgia, Belarus and Ukraine working with the agenda, And are there any similar trends or common challenges that you've seen in your studies so far?
Thank you, Joel. And it is nice to continue the issues that you raised about complexity and diversity of stakeholders that are involved in this program. And before I talk about progress in SDGs in these 3 countries, I want to say a few words about the report itself. Working on it, it was really an interesting journey for me. Journey in the history and ongoing processes of the Agenda 2030 implementation in the region and in the project countries. And I would say that it is a common journey for all of us who are today presented in this panel event. And I'm really grateful for Global Utmaning for this idea of this report and for possibility to join this work. And if to talk about localizing SDGs and realization SDGs in Eastern countries, namely Ukraine, Belarus and Georgia, first and foremost we should mention the diversity of the region. And it's a really boiling pot and mixture of different aspects, historical, political, socioeconomic, even environmental. And our stakeholders, local stakeholders and focus group of this project, they have different perceptions on democracy. They have different natural environmental landscapes they live in. They have different values they follow, and they have different traditions and different culture of communication in their countries. And all of that, it is really influencing the Agenda 2030 implementation. On the one hand, we can say it is a wicked problem and the challenge. But on the other hand, we can turn it into strengths. And Eastern Partnership between 6 partner countries and the European Union, it is indeed a platform that can help to transform this diversity into from a challenge to a strength. And to talk about the progress of SDG implementation, we all know that Belarus, Georgia, and Ukraine, they had the national priority of Agenda 2030 implementation, and the last Sustainable Development Report of 2021 shows that they have been progressing in achieving, in terms of ranking in the recent years, in achieving SDGs. But however, as we notice in our report and we highlight that there is a gap between national SDG framework and local planning documents and local governance. And there is a gap in terms of statistics, local monitoring of SDG progress and collection the local data. There is a gap in including national priorities and the Agenda 2030 national targets into the local planning documents. And there is a gap in including SDGs achievement in the local budget planning. And not to be so pessimistic, I should also add, coming to the end of my speech, that we have really a lot of local initiatives that move these countries toward the sustainable future. And those beautiful local initiatives, I know after interviewing some of program participants, and I'm really happy to see some of them presented today at the panel. I'm looking forward to their part. And I also know about those initiatives because I was involved in them working in civil society sector in Moldova and Ukraine for more than 10 years. And the point is that those initiatives, they do not connect themselves with Agenda 2030 oftenly. They are not aware that those initiatives, they are representing SDG actions, and they are like realizing 17 sustainability goals, but at the same time, they do not communicate them as SDG representatives at the local level. And what we should do here, maybe to prioritize capacity building programs and prioritize SDG education for local decision makers and prioritize local data collection. Because in general, we are doing really well in this region in terms of achieving SDGs. And the only thing we need to shift from pilot projects, and now I'm addressing our donors who also presented in the panel, we should shift from pilots to scaling projects, because a lot of pilots, they're very common, but unfortunately they sometimes do not go to the scaling for the whole country, especially if the country is big as Ukraine. So we need to avoid piloting, but start doing the whole country projects in education and capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Alexandra. And that provides an excellent segue to you, Krista, because this report is partly based on highlighting these initiatives that you mentioned from our participants, from our Swedish peers working with SDGs on a local level on a daily basis. What are their challenges, what are their opportunities, and what do they require in order to improve conditions for implementing the SDGs? And based on that, we have in this report, together with Alexandra, highlighted a few recommendations that we see as needed in order to create improved conditions for working with SDGs in the Eastern Partnership and elsewhere. A lot of these recommendations are general in the sense that they are applicable in Sweden as well, but these are based on the Eastern Partnership context. And Krista, could you please briefly highlight what are some of the key recommendations that we are presenting in this report? And I should say, the report is available at globalutmaning.se to download, and here it is. But Krista, please, could you name a few of the recommendations that we would like to put forward in this discussion today?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Alexandra. I think you already brought up very important recommendations as well related to national, regional, local divides, related to the lack of capacity and understanding what SDGs are, or how actually the local activities which are already ongoing, how connect them to sustainable development goals. But very briefly, I bring up or introduce, let's say, 5 sets of recommendations related to knowledge raising, SDG governance, multi-stakeholder engagement, also the potential of digital tools for the localizing and communicating SDGs, and also coherence of development, cooperation and financing. So SDGs awareness raising. I think what one recommendation is based on the report and analysis is that it is very important to make the SDGs as a, let's say, common language. To make SDGs visible, and it is also important to create, let's say, common SDG culture through awareness raising, and especially focusing on municipal and regional officials, but also civil society and most importantly youth. Then there is also need to support the SDG trainings for civil servants. For example, through leadership programs, but also through maybe national public administration schools who could also integrate the SDGs in their curriculums, but also it is important to support lifelong learning on SDGs, but also formal SDG education. So the SDGs and 2030 agenda should be included into the school curriculum and across disciplines. Also, it is important to support the local SDG campaigns and awareness raisings and engage youth, as I mentioned already before. And also, secondly, it is, I think the SDGs governance is actually one of the key areas which really needs to be focused, because taking this integrated and holistic approach, it really means that the government, local governments and regional governments, they have to start working completely differently across the different sectors, between departments, engaging different stakeholders. But for doing that, it is important that in Eastern Partnership countries, the local governments have they are authorized to be in charge of SDGs implementation at the local level. So it is important to, let's say, redistribute power and responsibilities from the national to subnational level, because that is exactly related to that gap you mentioned, Alexandra. It is also important to support the SDG-based local planning, and I think myself as practitioner, I really think it is a big challenge, but it is very, very important. And on that, we need more capacity building and peer learning for deploying local planning principles and co-creation mechanisms that are based on system thinking and holistic approach. Then also utilizing and spreading good examples, nationally between the Eastern Partnership countries, but also internationally. Also, when it comes to SDG governance, then it is important to really establish or support the establishment of regional, let's say, SDG coordination centers for creating partnerships for the SDG cooperation in the regional level, for example. But also, we know that at the national level, there are appointed SDGs coordinators. And we think that it is also important to appoint SDGs regional coordinators as well, and also support the establishment or establishing regional working groups on SDGs. And also important is to provide those groups and the coordinators the expertise and technical support for building and increasing their capacities to work with SDGs. Then transnational cooperation, and I think it is also very important because the challenges the countries are sharing, and not only Eastern Partnership countries, but also Swedish municipalities or Nordic or Baltic Sea region cities and municipalities, the challenges are the same. And I can just confirm that because I'm working with one of those challenges related to urban, let's say, local implementation of SDGs. So it is very important to involve local and regional stakeholders in international networks and discussions related to Agenda 2030, because especially when it comes to Eastern Partnership countries, normally they are not involved. And normally there are only, let's say, national level who is involved in international discussions and multilateral, let's say, discussions on SDGs implementation. It is also important to assist Eastern Partnership countries, local and regional administrations when it comes to development of SDGs-based integrated strategies and action plans. I'm not, I'm constantly stressing that aspect. I think it is important. But also it is needed to support transnational peers-to-peers learning and peers-to-peers coaching programs for promoting of SDGs work, knowledge exchange and problem solving at the subnational level by using those transnational networks and platforms. And also establishment of a regional Eastern Partnership countries network of SDGs coordinators, both the national level, because that is what we see in our program, that they before our program, they haven't been in contact. So definitely they can share their experiences and challenges, but also when it comes to regional SDG coordinators, I think it is also important that there is dialogue and collaboration between them in Eastern Partnership countries, but also with transnational partners.
Krista, just not to stress you, but highlight the most important aspects in these final recommendations.
I think that the last thing I wanted to highlight is financing. And what was brought up, and this is one of our recommendations as well, that it is also important to, let's say, to support walk the SDG talk, which means that together with those training and learning programs, it is important that let's say, this training programs budget will also include, let's say, small scale project funds in order really to put the new knowledge into practice at the local level and to support the local stakeholders, because as you said, the local NGOs and actors are very, very active. So I think it is important, besides of let's say, increasing the capacities of the regional and local governments, it is also important to support the local NGOs and civil society by providing them small project funding in order to really implement SDGs in the local level. So I think, and also, as you said, and I'm not repeating, switching from pilot projects to scaling. And I think transnational cooperation and leadership program is definitely the, let's say, the very core and place where you can promote it and where you can really scale up and bring together different stakeholders to share and also transfer the knowledge and best practices. So that is from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krista and Alexandra. And these recommendations, with a lot of more information about what they are based on and how they can be acted upon, is to be read in our report. And with that, we can just remind ourselves that actually all SDGs are local in the sense, and that is why we at Global Utmaningen in this program is focusing on the localizing of SDGs. And I will thank you and thank you for your insights. And now we will continue with the program to hear from the real key. And I invite you back to the audience of the program that are the participants, both the participants in the program and a representative from one of our Swedish peers. So I'm happy to welcome to this digital stage now, because we are still in COVID, so this is a hybrid event. Olga Kotko, who is the Deputy Director at Investment Innovation Center in Dnipropetrovsk State Regional Administration of Ukraine, and Oleg Sivagarko, who is the Deputy Chair of the non-governmental organization Sustainable Development Center in Belarus, Elena Chamukavili, who is the Management Service and Communication Specialist at the non-governmental organization Georgia's Environmental Outlook, and Magnus Volin, who is the head of the Sustainability Council at Växjö Municipality. I'm very happy to have all of you participating in today's seminar, and you've been working with us for these past 2 years. I hope that I can see 3 of you. I hope the other Oleg is also there somewhere. And there you are. Welcome. Great having you here. And as both Krista and Alexandra said, that we have been very fortunate to be able to pick your brains about what are the challenges and, more importantly, the needs of working with SDGs in this region. And to tell a little bit more about the work that you are doing, you are here today to present. So I would like to begin with Olga, Oleg, and Elena, to allow each and every one of you to tell briefly about what are you doing and how are you working with the SDGs. So Olga, perhaps you could begin. So in what way do you work with the 2030 agenda? Could you please give us a little bit of background to your organization?
Okay, thank you for the questions. Good morning. It's a pleasure to join today's meeting.
Now I cannot hear you. Let's see if it's... Try again.
And what about now?
Now we can hear you.
Right.
Yes.
So
welcome,
good
Olga.
morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to join today's meeting. And today I represent Dnipropetrovsk State Regional Administration, and I would like to share our experience. As the state enterprise, the Investment Innovation Center enables an effective dialogue with local authorities, business, and accelerates the process of supporting documentation for investment process and projects at the local level. And the main our task include assistance in writing investment project, preparation accompanying documents, assistance for investment projects at all stages, and searching for investors. And talking about these main aspects of our activities, we focus on 4 main sustainable development goals. It's economic growth, sustainable cities and communities, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. And if you talk about our good examples, I would like to mention that we took part in establishment of Dnipropetrovsk regional strategy by 2020 and 2025 years. We provide consulting support and project management for the representatives of NGOs, business, and local authorities. And besides this, the spheres of our interest include green manufacturing, ecological, infrastructure, and social projects. And working with our representatives, I mean, from the side of NGOs and local business and local authorities, we try to explain the importance of sustainable development goals in their business plan and in their social projects.
Thank you so much, Olga. And if I move to you, Oleg, could you briefly tell a little bit about your work and in what way you work with the 2030 Agenda in Belarus?
Hello, nice to see you. We support local and regional authorities in development and the implementation of local and regional sustainable development strategies. Mostly this kind of work are in the frameworks of international, with international support. It's like international projects. And it's very important for us that we use these SDG goals to make local people co-authors of these strategies, the co-makers of these strategies. First, these SDGs goals creates feeling and the knowledge that it's not only very local, very short or small work in concrete place, but it's a big work all over the world in different countries, especially in Western European countries that are very example for us. Also, for us, SDGs is good for Belarus because it's not like must be done order from the state, because it's a long time survived with the pressure of must be done from the government. But this is framework, but it's a tool for creative work. It's not, there are no concrete orders to create some number of organization or events, etc. It's very important now for us. Also, we use SDGs as tool not to forget indicators, important indicators, and develop local indicators. And there are several good examples. For example, now I'm a manager of a local project in the rural area of Belarus with the name Together for Community and Nature, Miori region. And we created a council for sustainable development in this region. It's a public council with participation, not only authorities, with participation with farmers, with local teachers, with young people. And through these 30 representatives, and also open for everyone to take part. And this permits to not only discuss, but participate in planning, participate in doing different things. Very good platform, and we, for example, use this for branding of region. It is really relatively new things for us, especially for small rural areas. We promote local festival, cranes and cranberries, and use the similar, even these sites similar to sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oleg, and you will have to elaborate a little bit more later on how you're working and tell us more about this festival, for example. But I would also like Elena to say a few words about your work in Georgia and how you are working with SDGs. So welcome to this seminar. I'm very happy that you are able to join. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning for you. Good afternoon for me, because it's 2 p.m. in Georgia. But coming from an NGO perspective and coming from a very focused NGO who is implementing projects in an environmental sphere, we are helping our local funders, donors, and governmental agencies in policy making or implementing several projects that are dedicated to ensuring affordable and reliable, sustainable development in many directions in climate change topics or under energy efficiency topics. So when it comes to SDGs, we are directly implementing projects under several goals like ensuring climate change mitigation and adaptation processes. But at the same time, we are trying to support and trying to build a bridge between the private and public sectors, because as CSOs and NGOs are quite a third party in this sphere of cooperation, we are trying to build a bridge which is missing currently in Georgia, unfortunately. Therefore, we are trying to implement some supporting projects in regards to sustainable and environmental development. I will stop here and not take too much of the time, because I think we are going into direction to discussing more relevant topics as we go through.
You are completely right there, Elena, and thank you so much. I would also very briefly allow Magnus to introduce himself and tell us briefly about your position in Växjö and in what way you are working with the SDGs as well, because you've been a speaker in this program for a number of times, and is also highlighted in the report as a Swedish peer to your fellow peers in the Eastern Partnership. So Magnus, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be able to join you today. And in Växjö, we are working with the sustainable program, and we are working to be totally climate neutral in 2030. That means that we need to work on all different levels, of course. And I'm very happy to hear both Ukraine, Belarus, and Georgia talking about building bridges between the public and the private. I think that is a key, absolutely. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Magnus. And you've all touched upon a number of these needs, the public-private, as an NGO working in society at large, finding inspiration in the SDGs, not just as a national mandate, but rather something as a global commitment and inspiration. And one of the approaches we have taken in this leadership program is to look at the challenges in order to know what do we need to work against and what do we need to overcome. And that is why I also would like you to reflect briefly on, based on your experience working to promote SDGs on the local or subnational level, what are some of the main challenges that you face in your daily work as practitioners? So, Olga, perhaps you could begin. Do you have any what are your experiences of challenges working with SDGs in your context?
Talking about the main challenges which you faced, it's first of all the low awareness level about sustainable development goals among the representatives of local authorities, unfortunately, yes, and the citizens. Because if you talk about this group of citizens, they work under investment projects and social projects. So as for me, they really should know about these goals. The second is the lack of necessary experience in implementation of projects that we will take into account Agenda 2030 framework. And the last is that local authorities are lacking expertise, unfortunately. Today we have some requirements from some state enterprise and municipalities, and they have the great problem in issues connected with water management. And by today, we have some interesting initiatives and ideas, and I would like to discuss with you, maybe, yes, and maybe you have some experience and you share with us this experience and with our local stakeholders. connected with the implementation, the initiatives and projects, because we have the great gaps in ecological, green manufacturing, etc., etc. So in this sphere, maybe Ukrainian has great gap. I hope, and maybe not, I hope that the main problem in this case is the low awareness and absence of practice in this sector. So it will be great if you can share your experience in this sphere in which you have the problems.
Thank you.
And the last, I add that we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals culture, and the main in this from this side, the main our stakeholder is students, it's youth, because in Ukraine, unfortunately, in our university, we don't have such course like Sustainable Development Goals. And for me, it's a really great maybe challenge, yes, for us to change maybe some approach in our education system. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olga. So low awareness and the lack of experience working with SDGs are commonly shared challenges, I can imagine. Oleg, from your perspective, do you agree with Olga? Are low awareness a challenge for you as well? And do you face any other challenges that are hindering your work to promote the SDGs?
Yes, I totally agree with Olga. And this is common problem for Belarus about knowledge about sustainable development goals, about sustainable development as a concept. And this, of course, the people who are, for example, local administration or local activists, they know about this, but there is a lack of easy to read the information for common people in, for example, in rural areas. It's not easy to explain what is it in with this very how say special official language of EU even. that is why we have to think about more simple language for introduction this concept. For example, for us also, as in Ukraine, for youth participation in the process is a problem. It's necessary to explain it, to show, to use all prospects of this work, the possibilities that it's possible to receive in this. Also, I would like to add special problems, challenges related with our country, Belarus, where still too much power is in the central administration. We feel there is a lack of local self-government, and in this case, we saw to these tools as localizing sustainable development goals, also as a tool for self-government and democracy. Also, there are some technical things that are important. For example, bad knowledge of English at local level. It's not permitted for international contacts. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Oleg. And as been highlighted, our countries are diverse in so many ways. Different government structures and different systems of how to localize SDGs and the autonomy of local stakeholders as well. But thank you. And Elena, having listened to Olga and Oleg, do you agree or do you differ on any of the challenges that has been brought forward?
I would not say that I neither differ nor agree completely, but I would say that I can build on it and I can share the basis of it, because coming from the lack of awareness on all levels, yes, it's a common challenge, but it differentiates when it comes to the public, local, and citizen levels, because when it comes to the governmental entities, we do have ministries that have separated the SDGs according to their specific action plans. So when it comes to their action, they are implementing the SDGs that are related to their topics, but at the same time, they are sometimes neglecting those that are the cross-cutting issues. So we need to raise awareness of governmental body representatives on the cross-cutting SDGs, because sometimes they are just overlooking those as something that is of a requirement for the other agency that is not related to their sphere of work. And it's very visible for an NGO that is working in the environmental sector, because as our ministry is working on environmental sector, while we are trying to have some cross-cutting issues directed and implemented in our policies, it's not as crucially implemented as it should have been. When it comes to local authorities, I would most definitely agree with Olga and Alec about lack of awareness of local citizens from rural areas. And the main issue is, of course, once again, simple language does not exist when it comes to explaining some policies to them. When it comes to explaining SDGs, yes, we show them the icons. Yes, we show them the specific messages, but it does not translate into their everyday lives. We need to somehow adjust the explanations to them in the most simplest, exemplary way, so that they know that if they, for example, have more women integrated in their policy making or decision making processes locally on a rural level, they would have more gender issues implemented in their action plans. So that by that, they are already tackling an issue, one that is on the SDG agenda, but they had no awareness of it. Therefore, this is also a problem. Another problem, once again, I would continue building on the problem that Alec and Olga have mentioned. This is the educational problem in the systematic manner. Youth are neglected as decision-making entities. Youth are never represented when it comes to policy making. Youth are just neglected when it comes to bigger changes in the national levels. I myself, as a representative of youth and as a representative of an NGO that has participated in policymaking, have been somehow left out when it came to recommendations, while youth representatives have a lot of ideas. Therefore, we need to integrate them on the decision-making table. At the same time, there's a lack of systematic education implementing the SDGs. So the portion of youth that know about the SDGs and know about the challenges and issues is very small from the perspective of national outlook. So I'm a very small portion of the youth that the Georgia has. So we need more awareness and education in a systematic manner. It is being done, but at the same time, the process is very slow and it will need 10 or 15 more years, which are very crucial in the Agenda 2030. We might not fit into the time frame. Another problems that I have mentioned are the private sector's involvement in the whole perspective of reaching SDG goals, because private sector sometimes neglects the need of participating. They sometimes think of it as a commitment that will not gain anything to them. So it's not as much of a goal for them as it's a punishment for them. So we need to change the mindset of the private sector. That's also a very big issue in Georgia. So these partnership alignments And elimination of overlaps between some entities would also play into an action plan that is more substantial, that is more holistic and sustainable.
Thank you so much for an excellent overview. And I think this touches on a number of challenges, we can call it, that I also very much relate to in the work here in Sweden as well, about building this whole of society approach, working with stakeholders, seeing the value of involving youth, women, other marginalized group in decision-making processes as experts in their own rights, and building these SDG governance mechanisms where we look at cross-cutting issues where the SDGs are not in between silos. So Magnus, having listened to Olga, Oleg and Elena, do you recognize these challenges from your perspective in Växjö, and perhaps more importantly, moving forward in this discussion, how can we work to overcome them? Do you have any examples?
Well, thank you. Well, yes, some of the challenges are, of course, the same. Then I would say that in Växjö, of course, the awareness is maybe higher in the NGOs and also in the private sector, and also among the inhabitants. But what I would say is that we did that work when we started because we needed to have a simpler language. So we scaled down the SDGs to 5 overall goals, which are very, very simple. One of the goals are, for example, that Växjö should be green and healthy. Everybody can understand that. And then we have 9 challenges from these 5 overarching goals. And they are also very easy to understand. It's about transportation, it's about heating our houses, it's about what we are eating in the schools and in the elderly care and so on. And then from those 9 challenges, we took examples of actions. So it should be very easy for a company or for a municipality organization, for an NGO or everybody to understand what could we do, what could I do. So we did that work, and it took some time because we wanted to have these 9 challenges incorporating all the SDGs so that there is no company or municipality organization that will work only with 1 or 2 or 4 goals. They have to work with all the goals, as Elena says. That is a main thing. So when we trotted down the SDGs down to 9 challenges, it was much easier for all the people to understand, okay, then we can see what we can do for these 9 challenges. So I think that is a very important work to be done.
Thank you so much, Magnus. And moving ahead, today's seminar is about also looking forward. In order, we have almost a half time of working with the 2030 agenda, and we know, just looking at climate adaptation, for example, that we need to speed up our work. We're in the decade of action, as Tove reminded us in the introduction. So I would ask each and every one of you to highlight 1 or possibly 2 key recommendations from your perspective on what you would need in order to scale up and improve your work on SDG localization. Olga, what would you like to bring forward in the coming discussions that we will be having with the UN and with the Swedish and EU stakeholders about recommendations for how to improve your work?
In order to improve the implementation of Sdgs on local levels, I would like to focus on 3 points. It's the first, to develop and incorporate Sdgs-related study courses in the universities, in the university education system. The second, it's to establish Sdgs culture, and I would like to emphasize on this point, first of all. And the last, it's introduce a new methodology of state budget planning, because as mentioned, Krista and Alexandra, we have the great problem in this case, connected with the planning national budget and methodology of collection of data, and etc., etc. So it's for us, it's really a problem.
Thank you so much, Olga. And Oleg, what would you like to put forward as terms of recommendations or needs that you see to improve your work and the work of Belarus implementing the SDGs?
Thanks, Olga. You said about one of my ideas. I have 2 another. It's first, it's development of use sustainable development strategies. I propose to make this common tool and to try to do similar work in different countries and different towns, cities, and villages. And the second, to try to develop something like a twin city or sister city movement in SDGs, like SDGs twinning. For example, Vecchio and Miori town in Belarus and Ukrainian and Georgian town make such kind of cooperation.
Thank you so much, Oleg. And Elena, what are your points to bring forward in the coming discussions and about how to speed up and improve Georgia's work on the SDGs?
While some recommendations apply to Georgia as well, I would like to state further that Georgia has taken up a lot of commitments at the same time. We have put them in our policies, but when it comes down to action, to local action, to national action, we cannot catch up to everything that we have taken up on ourselves. So while government is trying to put everything as fast as it can into our policies, we are very slow in our actions. So we need to take our time and put more funding in terms of money as well as human resources into the local actions. As Krista and Alexander in the beginning have perfectly highlighted, we need more sustainable work, meaning that the pilot projects that we have had, I myself in our organization, we have had several pilot projects that have not found the continuation to them. So these pilot projects are related to the huge amount of contributions and the policy changes we have committed ourselves to, but we are lacking in building up, we are lacking in the continuation. So to reach restoration of our environment as well as our social sphere, we need more sustainable work that maintains the commitments that we take up. Therefore, I would say that this change, this very broad umbrella change would mean everything that previous speakers have perfectly highlighted and summarized. And this umbrella change is not only needed in Georgia, but it's also needed in every Eastern Partnership country that has taken up a lot of commitments and it needs to catch up to that.
Thank you so much, Elena. And I would like to continue that and say that that umbrella is also needed in Sweden and in the Nordic as well. A lot of the challenges that has been brought forward is very relatable, especially this project funding, for example, looking at civil society and the role civil society has in ensuring a sustainable and inclusive transition, while also looking at the difficulties of finding sustainable financing for civil society organizations to operate and take that role seriously. And with that, Magnus, would you like, this program has been about the Eastern Partnership, but also about learning from each other, learning from sharing Swedish and Eastern Partnership perspectives. Do you have any ideas or recommendations for how your work and in your position would be able to improve your work on localizing the SDGs?
Well, what we need to do, since we have come quite a far way already, which we are very happy for, of course, we need to continue the work of, so to speak, interlocking the work with the SDGs in every organization, in every policy, in every document in the municipality, so that it would be very, very hard for anybody who would like to do something else than to work with the SDGs, to do something else than to save the climate. So this is very purposefully from our side, that we are working in every document, in every organization, in the municipality body, the talk and the discussions of the SDGs, and the follow-ups and in the financial reports every year and so on. So it will be hard and it will take a long time to ruin this work if anybody would like to do it. So I think that is a very good thing to do. It will take time, it's not easy, but step by step putting it in every policy that we are making. So I think that is what we need to continue with.
Thank you, Magnus. I think that's a very good sign-off for this panel in ensuring that the work that we are now putting into the implementing the SDGs also sustain even after 2030. We know that a sustainable transition will not stop just by we reach the year 2030. So ensuring some resilience in the systems that we are now establishing is a very good sign-off. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining, both in the leadership program and in today's session. Olga, Ale, Helene, and Magnus, thank you. And we will now move on in today's seminar to focus a little bit about the global and the local perspective, because we know that we are talking about global goals that require local action. And UN has been instrumental in both establishing these agendas, but also working to implement them, both on a national but also on a subnational level. And as Krista highlighted in her speech, this leadership program has been made possible both by financial support from the Swedish Institute, but also from our partners that we've been working together with. Partners in Ukraine, Georgia, Belarus, and in the EU. The United Nations development programs in Georgia, Belarus, and Ukraine have been instrumental in providing insights to the program and reaching out to stakeholders, and so too has the United Economic Commission for Europe been. So I'm very happy to welcome to this digital stage Mustafa Sant-Amnetov. He is the Regional Development Program Manager at UNDP Ukraine. Welcome to this seminar, Mustafa. Nino Kakabava, who is the Project Manager at UNDP Georgia, and Gulnara Roll. She is the Secretary to the Committee of Urban Development at United Nations Economic Committee. I'm very happy to have all of you participating in today's seminar, and I hope Gulnara is with us as well. There you are. Nice to see you, Gulnara and Nino. First off, I would like to begin to ask each and every one of you if you recognize the challenges and so to the recommendations that has been brought forward, both in the report but also in the previous panels, based on your work supporting these countries with their work to implement the SDGs. So perhaps, Mustafa, could you begin just briefly reflecting? Do you recognize what's been said? What is your perspective on the overall challenges and needs when it comes to working with SDGs on a local level? And you will all have an option to comment on this. Mustafa, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Joel. And first of all, I would like to welcome and all colleagues and distinguished participants of today's seminar. My name is Mustafa Sant-Amnetov, and I'm representing UNDP Ukraine country office. In UNDP Ukraine, I'm responsible for our regional development program, which focuses on promoting sustainable development at subnational and local levels. And taking this opportunity, I would like to thank Global Ut Mining colleagues, and personally Joel and Krista, for our excellent cooperation and invitation to this event. And my congratulations on finalizing and publishing this extremely topical report on SDGs localization in Eastern Partnership countries. Kudos to the whole team, and especially to Alexandra. I was happy to meet with her and provide my humble inputs, which I hope were useful. And reflecting on the what was already said and what was included in the report as conclusions and recommendations, it very much resonates with my own thinking. But I will probably stop here and give the floor to others for introductory words, and we'll have a chance to further unpack it in continuation of our panel.
Thank you so much, Mustafa, and I can only agree. It's been a joy cooperating with UNDP Ukraine. It's been a successful partnership that I look forward to continue even after this program. Nino, I'm very happy that you're able to join us as well. UNDP Georgia has also participated as partners to this program and been instrumental in providing feedback and insights to its development. Could you briefly reflect on, do you recognize these challenges that has been brought forward, and how do you briefly work with that in the context of Georgia?
Thank you. Thank you. It's great talking. Thank you for inviting us. Absolutely, yes. When I was listening to previous panelists, I could relate that we have the similar challenges and we have the similar context.
Nino?
Yes?
Sorry, we are hearing you a little bit. Could you step a little bit further to the microphone? I think I hear you better now. Try again.
Do you hear me better now?
Much better. So improved.
Okay. I will try to be. Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that I think this is partially determined by the fact that like this is the next step, like localizing SDGs, which is like bringing SDGs from national level to local level. Previously, countries had on the agenda, they had the SDG nationalization in the previous years. So now we are moving forward, and now we are trying to bring SDGs to the subnational level. And I suppose that even though there are different like government structures and systems in different countries, like still we share a lot of challenges and opportunities, especially at the local level. And what other panelists mentioned is that the awareness, limited awareness about SDGs, and also the poor linkages between like activities and SDGs. So those are actually the basically two main directions we need to address. And at this moment, UNDP Georgia is the leading partner of the government of Georgia administration in implementing the SDG localization plan, together with some other international development partners. And we are working with them, first of all, to raise awareness and to make sure that the SDGs, the activities which contribute to SDG achievements are duly reflected in the strategic plans at the local level.
Thank you so much, Nino. And we will get back shortly on a little bit more on how you're actually working and perhaps highlight some good examples from your work. But I would also like to introduce Gulnara. You are working on a more wider perspective, not just in any single country, but in the Eastern Partnership as a whole, working with urban development, focusing also on the localization of SDGs. So what are your first reflections and comments so far on the challenges that has been brought forward in this panel?
Thank you very much, Joel. And again, thank you so much for inviting me. And it's a really very clear and very practical discussion. And I think the report is very rich in the content. So I would like to reflect on, first of all, on the capacity. Absolutely, there is a need in working together. And I think what you are doing is really very unique, trying really to facilitate cooperation between many, many different organizations, you know, UNDP offices, also different international organizations. So I really support this approach. That's important because any efforts we're putting for that are not enough. Also, in the COVID-19 pandemic, there is a need in new approaches, innovative approaches, and only together we really can move somewhere, improve the quality of life, improve the capacity at the local level. So thank you so much for really facilitating this cooperation between different organizations. The regional and in this connection, I think the regional cooperation between different organizations in Eastern Partnership countries is very, very important. So I very much support the idea of the regional group going forward. And we're really happy at the UNECE also to support this cooperation between, we really see that, and we get this feedback from countries because we as the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, which is the regional branch of the United Nations in Geneva, covering basically all the Western, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, US, Canada, we really see that the feedback we receive from the countries and the cities that they would like as a priority to get experience from other country. What we do right now, we're working actually quite a lot. Now we're developing on smart city profile of Tbilisi in Georgia. We're working with the urban resilience in Kharkiv, Ukraine, for instance, and we do many other activities. So we are using already the experiences in Norway and Sweden. For instance, we're working with Helsingborg in Sweden and with Trondheim and many other municipalities in Norway, where actually already this approach of input of volunteer local reviews into the national reviews is already the case. SDG budgeting is already the case. And based on this very much Nordic experience, we developed, for instance, UNECE regional guidelines, and now we're developing regional guidelines, also engaging many other UN institutions, because I think it's this regional cooperation also has to be based on the solid methodological basis. I also will add the issue of this, the kind of unifying methodological basis also on the data, because there are over 100 different indicator systems that are used. So we're also using one, but we're now developing cooperation with other UN agencies. So I think this regional cooperation, also bringing the Nordic experience to Eastern Partnership countries, is very important. We're doing that. We're happy to work together with you, and definitely the data approach is very, very important. And just to mention you that we're organizing Forum of Mayors, second Forum of Mayors in April. It will be actually also feeding into the Regional Forum Sustainable Development and further on into higher level political forum on sustainable development. And we'll be really happy to work together to organize those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gulnara, and we are very happy to cooperate, and we will share even next week, I believe, in a roundtable to discuss the report focusing on the voluntary local review, because that is a topic that haven't really been addressed in this leadership program, but is something that we are looking into continuing with, because voluntary local review, that is how subnational stakeholders, cities and regions can track their progress towards SDGs, is something that is increasing in awareness both in the Nordics but also in the Eastern Partnership, and it's a common ground where we can cooperate. I would like to return back to what Nino said about localizing SDGs is now the next step. We know the importance. It's been a national priority, and now we have to make it a subnational priority. And perhaps, Mustafa, you would like to begin to highlight perhaps some few examples on how you are supporting that next step in Ukraine. How are you working with your projects and experiences of supporting the local implementation of the SDGs? Could you tell us a few key examples?
Sure, thank you very much. But before going to the examples, I would like to say a couple of words about UNDP and its role as SDGs integrator. And maybe let me start with unpacking what we mean under SDGs integration. With just less than a decade until 2030, the world requires new solutions and new ways of thinking, working, partnering, and financing. This is not though. To push past all development frontiers. And that is why UNDP is focusing on SDGs integration as approach to development that targets systems and not just thematic sectors to address all aspects of complex challenge, including its root causes, its ripple effects across economies, societies, and natural ecosystems. The UNDP's integration portfolio is focused on supporting stakeholders with approaches, methods, capabilities, and spaces to go from knowing that complex development challenges require integrated approaches and doing integration and leading system change on a daily basis. So achieving SDGs requires partnership of governments, private sector, civil society, citizens, that was already mentioned in the first panel. And we work here in Ukraine in close collaboration with Ukrainian government, with civil society, with business membership organizations, including key line ministries, departments, agencies, in a robust and integrated manner through 6 signature solutions. And those signature solutions are keeping people out of poverty, improving governance, working on crisis prevention and resilience, using nature-based solutions in harmony with nature, investing in clean, affordable energy, and ensuring women's empowerment and gender equality. And these three solutions are integrated in and targeted within three programmatic areas. This is how our work here in Ukraine is structured. The three key areas or portfolios are inclusive development, recovery, and peace building, the democratic governance, and energy and environment. All three portfolios are aligned with government's priorities, national development strategy and action plan, which includes accelerating economic growth, attracting foreign investments, fighting corruption, resolving the armed conflict in the Eastern Europe, Ukraine, and streamlining the digital governance to make public services available electronically. And of course, Agenda 2030 and SDGs are in the core of each three pillars. So coming back to examples, I will tell you what within each of the three pillars, we have good examples of practical work. For example, as part of democratic governance, we currently supporting government of Ukraine with establishing and running an SDG office within the Secretariat of Cabinet of Ministers, which is helping to mainstream Agenda 2030 in the national policies and strategies. We also support currently the formation of integrated national financing framework under the ongoing promoting strategic planning and financing for sustainable development at the national and regional level in Ukraine project. In addition, we closely cooperate with the State Statistics Service in order to improve the SDGs monitoring at all levels. Another example is under the energy and environment portfolio. We act for climate change mitigation and adaptation by implementing EU for climate program here in Ukraine, as well as supporting the green recovery of Ukraine within a number of actions. And at the subnational and local levels, as a part of regional development program, which I represent here, we're building capacities of local actors and helping them to measure the progress towards SDGs, specifically at subnational and local levels, piloting and testing a number of replicable and scalable solutions for sustainable development, but also facilitating the local cross-sectoral partnerships for development. These multi-sectoral coalitions, which include local authorities, businesses, academia, civil society organizations, they work together with UNDP support to promote local economic development, energy efficiency, effective waste management, sustainable mobility, and many other aspects of development. I think I will bring a bit more examples, but at this point I would like to stop to give opportunity to others also to contribute to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. And you are, as you said, also interviewed in this report, and some of the recommendations that has been brought forward has been based on the experience of UNDP Ukraine. For example, the regional coordinators network is something that has been voiced as something that could be echoed in the other countries. But I would like to hand over to Nino also to say a few words about how we have raised challenges such as raising awareness, build these whole of society approaches, supporting the government, perhaps developing or simplifying or finding coherence between these indicators. Could you say something about how UNDP in Georgia are working to overcome these challenges that we have addressed? Do you have any examples?
Yes, thank you. I would also add...
And a little bit closer to the mic, sorry.
You can just hear.
Yeah, very good.
I would also add another challenge, which is also, I think it is also determined by the fact that this process has started quite recently, literally a couple of years ago. It is also not that like active coordination between different government agencies. What I mean here is that like in municipalities, they cannot really act on their own with regard to SDGs because they don't have relevant knowledge and capacities. And at the same time, at the central level, there are different like public bodies, for example, Ministry of Regional Development and Infrastructure, and also the administration of the government of Georgia. And those two bodies, they try to coordinate certain aspects, certain different aspects at the municipal level. And in that case, SDGs are under the mandate of the government, of administration of the government, which makes it like poor. I would say it's a little bit poor thing because some other stuff is under the MRDI. So it really needs to be coordinated smoothly and more actively at the central level as well. So that the answer is like synchronized, not it is just like some agencies are working on their own, and it is not like the message is not delivered countrywide and in synchronization with other policies. What is more important also is that I mentioned these action plans at the local level, strategic action plans at the local level, which are the main guiding documents of municipalities. And what we are trying and what we are supporting is that to incorporate SDGs, to link the strategic planning with SDGs. It also requires very good coordination and public awareness. Right now, we have developed a handbook for the trainings, and a series of trainings are being conducted with UNDP Georgia's support and implemented by the government of administration at the local level. And we pretty much hope that in that way, first of all, they will raise awareness. I mean, people will receive, and local municipal staff will receive information about SDGs, and more importantly, they will be able to translate those principles into action, and also to understand how their activities can be translated into, not translated, but how their activities contribute to SDG goals. And during next year, we also plan to conduct a series of public awareness campaigns. Before the pandemic, we had, in one of the Georgian regions, we had SDG Festival, which proved to be a big success, especially in the region. And we intend to conduct these community-based different events and community gatherings, which we believe is a very good way to engage local community and to engage people in municipalities, not just have something in the news, etc., but to have things at the local level and very closely to local community and local population. So this is our plan for the next year, and at the same time, we believe that other development partners will also get engaged, and this mandate will become broader. And once there are many partners engaged, the activities are becoming diverse and more successful, of course.
Thank you so much, Nino. And Gulnara, you've already touched upon this a little bit, so I wanted to move beyond now just looking at the challenges and perhaps examples, but also sort of based from your more overarching perspective, working in the region, but also working together with Swedish peers, Norwegian peers. Sort of, could you see any sort of recommendations from your perspective on what would be needed in terms of activities, partnerships, financing, or whatever it may be, to improve conditions for working with SDGs, focusing on the Eastern Partnership? Do you have anything to highlight from your perspective on this?
Yes, I would, Joel, I would highlight two topics. First of all, I think we have a network of excellence in Norway, which brings together, I think, at least 18 different municipalities. What they stress is important, and this is what we also incorporated into our original guidelines for the VLRs, that we shouldn't be developing separate action plans. I think in some of the projects done by donors, we write in the project proposals that we develop this action plan and that rebuilding plan. But at the local government level, they have their own lives, they have their own reality. So what is very important is that we don't create another action plan, but really follow to make sure that anything we propose is already tailored to the needs of municipality and will become part of the political decisions of the city council, which is also actually provided also by the local budget. So more of us that this kind of action plans, the recommendation at the city level, they have to be developed in very participatory approach. And I think Norway is really, you know, an excellent example how to do that. And I'm very happy to see what you provided in the report, this participatory approach. I think we need to work together to really promote that, because the VLRs have to be done not for people, but with people, with the inhabitants of the municipality. So I think that's very important. And finally, is the financing. I would probably join with Krista that the main recommendation is about financing. And it's not about the program of financing, but going to very specific kind of flagship projects. We may provide jointly recommendations, and part of our smart sustainable city profiles, which we're developing for cities, we develop recommendations, but there is always a question where the money are, because local government is not enough. We speak sometimes rather theoretically about the public-private partnership or people first public-private partnerships. What we do at UNECE now, we're actually joining with many international financing organizations to develop kind of pre-financing facilities. And we don't have yet this experience in Ukraine and Georgia, but we're planning to do that because our work is still ongoing. But for instance, in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan, we're working with CDIA because we see the main gap in the financing, because money are there. Money is with the private investors, is with IFIs, but they are much larger and they are on different conditions than the city, because of sometimes low capacity is able to accept. So it's important to reach this gap of the pre-financing. And I think in Bishkek now we receiving, I mean, there will be financing for 500,000 as a kind of pre-financing facility to legalize 5 informal settlements. And this is a project which for 20 years could not be resolved. And only now, because of the cooperation between the United Nations and between the IFIs and kind of a platform, actually also is funded quite a lot by Sweden and Austria. Thanks to that, we are actually going into improvement of very specific work of informal settlements. So I think this is, so we are kind of experimenting now with different IFIs, also with the CB and other, we're discussing also with other IFIs. So I think this is where we need to focus on, because money are there, the needs are there, but there's definitely a gap. And this is a gap because probably sometimes of institutional design of the international organizations, because we're doing projects and IFI is doing the money, you know, so there should be this pre-financing facilities. I believe that probably also UNDP offices have this experience, some of these experiences. So maybe there should be separate, we may think about having separate meetings just to discuss what is the experience with this. And I would think that this is another very important point to be discussed and developed further to ensure that those projects, infrastructure projects, actually get the financing to improve the quality of life of people in the cities.
Gulnara, I think that's an interesting topic also about the level of financing. How does it reach to the local level and the capacity of receiving that? And this is something also we can bring into our next panel, when we will talk a little bit more from the Swedish donor perspective on these topics. But Nino and Mustafa, Nino, I begin with you. Briefly, do you agree with what Gulnara highlighted, and do you have any other key recommendations for how the work on localizing SDGs in Georgia could improve?
Yes, I have already mentioned that we have a lot of similarities between our countries.
A little bit closer, Nino, sorry.
We have a lot of similarities, and I believe that the recommendations would work for all of us. And I believe that it's time for our countries to start to pay closer attention to SDG localization. While we have been very successful in the process of nationalization of SDGs, and we made very impressive progress. And Mustafa has been also discussing the support UNDP is providing in Ukraine, and in Georgia we have also very successful case, and we have very well established secretariat and the national plans, etc. So next step would be to bringing SDGs to subnational level. And I can bring a very good example, I think, is Open Government Partnership Forum, which is also like global process, and it also goes now to the subnational level, and we have a very good example of that too. And I think that SDGs should also, SDG localization should also take place within the same pace.
Thank you so much, Nino. And Mustafa, having listened to both Gulnara and Nino talking about next steps going forward, what are your next steps moving forward in Ukraine based on your experience and the work of UNDP?
Thank you, colleagues. Actually, I cannot agree more with my colleagues and previous speakers, including those from the first panel. So let me also maybe mention not only challenges, but some possible solutions to that challenges. So one of the challenges which was already mentioned is low awareness of Agenda 2030 and SDGs, and I believe that was mentioned by Olga, Ms. Olga Katko from Dnipropetrovsk. And this is exactly why, and recognizing these problems, this is exactly why we have recently developed and made publicly available free tailored online courses on SDGs, targeting the three key target groups, such as public servants, businesses, and civil society. If you allow me, I can share the links to the online courses. Two of them have subtitles in Russian and in English, so they are in free access, so everyone can use it. Specifically, online courses for businesses and for civic activists can be used everywhere in the Eastern Partnership countries. I will share that. And another problem, which was already mentioned, is a low level of capacity, especially institutional capacity. In Ukraine, we are also experiencing that. And we have quite good solutions to that, because we are providing various trainings and supporting experience exchange. And we do it through the network of our regional coordinators of community development assistants, playing the role of SDGs coordinators, which was already mentioned. So they are based in the regions, and they actually facilitate the ongoing dialogue on SDGs implementation among the partners. And coming back to key recommendations, I will not be here very original, but I will mention just maybe four very, very briefly. First, we should know it. My first recommendation is know it. And the local actors, especially those who are directly responsible for local development, have to be aware of Agenda 2030 and SDGs. Then measure it. You don't control or manage the process unless you properly manage it. So the quality of statistical data coming from local level is essential. And the system of municipal statistics is the fundamental basis for it. Then planning. The inclusive decision-making, which takes into consideration needs and perceptions of all groups, is essential. I think this problem was also mentioned by Ellen Samukashvili. She has already mentioned that youth is one of such groups, but let's think more broadly, because very often local development plans are designed by middle-aged people based on their understanding of needs and perceptions of other groups. To avoid this bias, we have to include them directly. And finally, do it. There is nothing new. Think globally and act locally. I would only add one word to this formula, partnership. So acting jointly, uniting efforts and resources can bring fantastic results and rapidly change the communities for better. And the local development actors should try it and learn the power of partnerships by implementing joint initiatives with support of UNDP, of other international organizations and actors. And I'm happy to see actually that many of these recommendations are very well reflected and very well resonate with the recommendations included in your report. So once again, kudos to your team, and I'm happy to pass the floor back to you, Joe.
Thank you so much, Mustafa, for an excellent send-off about what we need moving forward. And thank you also, Nino and Gulnara, for joining in this leadership program and in today's seminar. I'm very happy that you took time and shared your experiences and expertise. Thank you so much. And with that, we will move into today's final panel to talk a little bit more about the EU and Swedish perspective and priorities working with sustainable development in these countries and in this region. As been highlighted already, the leadership program has been financed by the Swedish Institute, and Sweden, together with the EU, are major donors in the Eastern Partnership region. And based on the challenges we have identified and recommendations we have presented, we will now look ahead to how sustainable development and the 2030 agenda is reflected in both Swedish and EU priorities for the Eastern Partnership region. And to help me do this, I would like to introduce both to stage here in Stockholm, but also to this hybrid panel, Radoslav Darksi, who is the Deputy Head of Division of Eastern Partnership and Regional Cooperation with OSCE at European External Action Services. Welcome, Radoslav. And we also have Kristina Danielsson, Head of Unit for Eastern Europe at SIDA, joining us digitally. And here in Stockholm, we have Anna Westerholm, Ambassador for the Eastern Partnership, Swedish Minister of Foreign Affairs. Welcome to stage. And we have Kurt Bratteby, Director of the Department for International Relations at the Swedish Institute. Welcome to stage. I'm very happy to have the four of you joining in today's seminar. And before we dive in, I know some of you have just recently joined, but I know Kurt and Kristina have listened in for the seminar. I would like to therefore begin by asking Kurt, do you have any sort of general reflections so far? Do you recognize the challenges and priorities that has been brought forward from your work at the Swedish Institute?
Well, thank you. Yeah, certainly. And let me start by thanking you, the authors of the report, and the participants in the leadership program for all your thoughtful insights and reflections and recommendations. I feel that there's a wealth of, I would say, analysis and reflections to take away from the report that I certainly recognize. And I think that there are many things that have been addressed during the seminar today, including challenges like lack of disaggregated data at a local level, a lack of systemic approach to local planning and budgeting with SDGs incorporation, a low awareness has been mentioned many times, and understanding of the SDGs among local civil servants, perhaps, and among citizens as well. So, and also, of course, a lack of capacity to implement the SDGs locally. So these are topics that I recognize and that I feel, of course, are challenging for any country to address. And I think that the program as such has addressed a need, a dire need to promote peer-to-peer learning within this context.
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. You will be asked to elaborate a little bit further on this going forward. But just briefly, Kristina, you have also listened in. Very briefly, from your perspective at SIDA, the Swedish Aid and Development Cooperation Agency, do you recognize these challenges that have been brought forward, both by the participants of the program, but also by the UN representatives in your work?
Yes, well, thank you, certainly. And I think it has been a very interesting morning. I've listened very carefully, and a lot of very important issues have been raised. Yes, I do recognize a lot of the issues raised. And I also, Krista mentioned initially that we need to walk the talk, and I agree. This is a joint responsibility, and it's so important to learn from each other and also to share best practices. So thank you.
And the aim of this panel is a little bit to more talk about what happens now. How do we walk the talk, as you said, and what are the future priorities, both for Sweden but also for the EU. And that is why I'm very happy to be joined by Radoslav. You are working with EU External Action Services, and you're also working with the strategy for the EU Eastern Partnership that is governing the cooperation between EU and these 6 countries. And that strategy is currently being renewed, updated. And I would like to ask you to briefly talk about how, from your perspective and from your work, is the 2030 agenda and sustainable development in general addressed, both in the current strategy, but also perhaps more importantly in the coming strategy and the work going forward between these 2 regions?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I hope that you can hear me well. Yes, indeed. I would like to, in a couple of words, outline what we plan for the future of the Eastern Partnership and how this future agenda is closely interlinked with SDGs, because it's simply true. Yes, we will find a lot of interlinkages there, but before I go into details, I will refer to something I heard from some of you already today, namely the context. Quite challenging context, particularly taking into account that in 2 weeks' time we are going to have an Eastern Partnership Summit, which is to endorse the future agenda. So I need to start my intervention with a short reference to the geopolitical context, which once again is quite complex. First of all, because of the conflicts. Second of all, because of the situation in partner countries, the situation in Belarus, of course, and artificially created not even well, let's call it by name, security situation on the EU borders. Also the situation in Ukraine and the military buildup and the gas crisis in Moldova, and on top of that, obviously, the COVID pandemic, which obviously is not making our situation better in this respect. So this is the general context in which we operate, preparing the future agenda. And when referring to the future agenda, I really need to mention 2 documents which are very important for the substance, namely the joint communication that we adopted in March 2020 and the joint staff working document from this year. The reason I mention these 2 documents is that this constitutes the Bible. This really, in a detailed way, shows what is our thinking when it comes to the future of the Eastern Partnership, and this future agenda puts a lot of emphasis on partners' resilience, and this resilience will be an overarching theme for our future activities. We also identified 5 areas of resilience, namely economy, democracy, environment, digital, and society. And once again, everything will be delivered under the theme of resilience. In addition, we also use recovery, resilience, and reform as a slogan for our future activities. And we divided these areas of our engagement into 2 pillars, namely the investment and the governance pillar. So when it comes to the investment pillar, it will be underpinned by the economic and investment plan. We hope, we are sure it will mobilize up to 2.3 billion euros for funding investments to support the post-COVID recovery in numerous sectors, in transport, in SMEs, digital, environment, and for the first time, by the way, health, which is obviously quite important taking into account the COVID pandemic. And here, obviously, we will find several references to particular SDGs, to the SDG 8 on economic growth and employment, to SDG 9 on infrastructure and innovation, and of course the SDG 1 to end the poverty, but also on transformation of the urban environment, and as well as working on further modernization and integration of local and regional areas. So these are interlinkages when it comes to our investment pillar. But also I mentioned the second, the governance pillar, which is equally, if not more important for the future agenda, because this governance pillar shows our commitment to common values. And we have been always underlining it, and we will underline it, that democracy, good governance, rule of law, fight against corruption, but also human rights as such, also gender equality will remain the cornerstone of the Eastern Partnership policy, and it will be really highly relevant for our future activities. And in addition, of course, we will try to encourage our partners to show progress when it comes to implementation of particular reforms, and this pillar is particularly relevant to the promotion of peaceful and inclusive societies, access to justice, and effective, accountable and inclusive institutions. Obviously, I think we don't have time to go more into details through all priority areas. As you heard, I mentioned 5 of them, but in each and single case, you will find some interlinkages with SDGs. And I would like to once again underline health, but on the top of it, the values and the democracy, good governance, and the rule of law. So to summarize, once again, going back to what I said at the beginning, the summit is ahead of us in 2 weeks' time. And take into account this complex, challenging geopolitical context, I think we will have to use it to show our unity, but also commitment to the future agenda, to show that the Eastern Partnership will remain on the top of the EU agenda, to show that the Eastern Partnership is delivering and is bringing concrete benefits to the people, because all of it is about bringing tangible results to people, that it delivers, and it's really ready for the future, which might be challenging, but that's why we bring up our new Eastern Partnership agenda to show that we are committed to cooperation with the region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Radoslav. Perhaps we are able to dive back a little bit into these priorities later on, but thank you so much for your overview. And speaking about the Eastern Partnership, I would like to turn to Anna. You are the ambassador for the Eastern Partnership at the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Sweden has been instrumental in the previous and in taking the initiative for the Eastern Partnership together with Poland, and have been working now with setting the priorities for the follow-up. So I would like to ask you, sort of from a Swedish perspective, what has been the priorities in the follow-up strategy, and where is the room for sustainable development in that?
That's a very valid and important question, and let me take a step back and to just state that since the SDGs were adopted in 2015, we were among the first member states started raising this issue, that this needed to be integrated with the Eastern Partnership priorities, because they were mutually reinforcing the agenda for sustainable development and the agenda that the EU and its member states offers to partner countries are clearly interlinked. So for Sweden, this has been the basic priority for many years. In terms of the future agenda, we are highlighting much welcoming and putting much focus on the green transition and linking the Eastern Partnership priorities with the Green Deal that the European Union now is undertaking, because the transformation that we will be undergoing our partners, our neighbors, need to be making the same journey, following the same trajectory as we do. So that's an offer in the new agenda. But obviously, the other central point for Sweden, as Radek was also pointing out, is human rights, democracy, gender equality, rule of law. These are the basics. Without that, you cannot have sustainable development and addressing corruption. But just to add to what Radek was saying, because a large part of the agenda going forward is actually Swedish priorities, and we are quite pleased with the offer that we are now putting forward. But to really say that the interesting thing when you look at it is to on operational level, how all the SDGs are interwoven into the programming. And that's also a part where we are deeply involved. So I'll leave it at that, and we can come back to the details if you want to.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that's also been highlighted earlier in this program, that the SDGs provide this framework where you can actually find coherence and cooperate between regions, between countries, and here the EU and Eastern Partnership can find similarities, looking at the goals, perhaps. But I would like to turn also to Christina again, because one of the topics that has been highlighted so many times here is the topic of financing and receiving support. And in one way or another, SIDA and the other European donors are partly responsible of making the Eastern Partnership strategy happen and ensuring that democracy, good governance, equality, gender equality is put in action in our development cooperation. And one topic that was highlighted in the previous panel was also how do we limit the gap between the national and the local, and how do we ensure that financing reach all the way down. And so I would like to ask you, being in charge of this region at SIDA, could you highlight how is SIDA working to promote sustainable development in the Eastern Partnership and ensuring that the local level is included in that work?
Thank you. I will try to be brief, just perhaps to kick off by saying a few words, a general comment on Swedish development, overall development. The objective is, of course, to create conditions for improving the lives of people living in poverty and oppression. And all the development cooperation is based on the principle of aid and development effectiveness, the 2030 Agenda, Addis Ababa Action Agenda, and the Paris Agreement. So this constitutes the basis for all our work. And SIDA works in different ways with different methods and modalities and in different parts of the world with all global goals. I think it's also important to say that since Agenda 2030 brings together different stakeholders, SIDA is actively coordinating and cooperating with other Swedish government agencies, municipalities, academia, civil society, business community, and others on issues relating to Agenda 2030. It is key to work together on these issues. And also perhaps a general remark on overall priorities relating to the global goals. Current priorities is to focus on two specific assignments, the drive for democracy and biodiversity. And these areas are integrated in all our work. So this constitutes a basis. Looking at Eastern Partnership region, Eastern Europe, the work is governed by a strategy that is decided upon by the Swedish government. The strategy gives the direction and the priorities for our work. The development cooperation in Eastern Europe is labeled reform cooperation, and this is to signal that support for reform processes are key. And the overall goal is to forge closer ties with the European Union, together with the overarching goal for development cooperation, which is poverty eradication. So in Eastern Europe, we work with bilateral and regional programs, and needless to say, the Eastern Partnership provides an important frame for our work, together with the 2030 Agenda. And as Anna mentioned, these are mutually reinforcing priorities and work well together. Within our current strategy, we have three priority areas. It's inclusive economic development, democracy and human rights, and environment and climate. And Anna also mentioned the values that are so important for all our work: gender equality, rule of law, democratic development, human rights, anti-corruption, environment, climate, to mention some of them. So this is at the heart of everything we do and support. Talking about the SDGs, much of the dialogue and the discussions take place in our bilateral programs, and our embassy are very engaged in this work, dialogue with government, civil society, donors, donor community, and business community. We have several ongoing initiatives. Perhaps to give a few examples, and we heard already from Ukraine, we have a well-established cooperation with UNDP in Ukraine. We support the Empowerment of Partnership for Sustainable Development program, which I believe have many interesting results, not least on the local level. And Sweden and SIDA is also, together with Switzerland, supporting the SDG Coordination Office in the CABMIN that we heard mentioned earlier. In Georgia, we support a program that is directed more on the business involvement, which we also consider to be extremely important. It's a program called Leadership for Sustainable Development in Georgia, together with the Civil Development Agency. We have also provided secondments, for example, for UNDP Armenia to work on SDG issues. And in our reporting to the government, we include references to how we support activities that relate to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. we are also in constant dialogue with implementing partners on the SDGs, on reporting, and on looking at the indicators and how to relate activities. Maybe I will stop there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christina. Unfortunately, today we have a very full schedule with a lot of interesting speakers, so we have to keep it a little bit short. But thank you so much for the overview, and we will see if we can return to you in the wrap-up. But I also wanted to talk to Kurt, because you are head of international relations at the Swedish Institute, and the Swedish Institute has this history of promoting these sustainability leadership programs and leadership programs in general. We have worked in a few, previously focusing on the Baltic Sea region, for example. And one thing that has been brought forward as a recommendation in the report and by the participants are the need and value of cooperation, transnational or international, whatever you want to call it, cooperation. Meeting peers, sharing good examples, and getting to know how to work together with the 2030 agenda. So I would like to ask you, sort of, how do you see from a Swedish Institute perspective that such initiative, the leadership programs, can help support in the development of the Eastern Partnership region going forward with a focus on sustainable development and based on what you've heard here today?
Well, thank you for a very, very relevant question. Well, to start with, I think that it's important to say that the mission of the Swedish Institute is to leverage Swedish experiences and Swedish expertise, knowledge. At the same time, we also want Swedish actors to learn from the experience of our regional partners. So you mentioned the Baltic Sea regional cooperation that we support, and I think that a lot of what we do, the programmings that we offer, are designed to foster mutual learning and experience exchanges. And one example of this is the Baltic leadership programs, which have been conducted within the framework of the Baltic Sea strategy, the EU Baltic Sea strategy, and where we've created networks of experts within the different priority areas that have been an important vehicle in order to foster concrete cooperation, not only on project basis, but also to, in a way, to incentivize the creation of processes, ongoing processes, focusing on specific challenges, among them also, of course, related to the Sustainable Development Goals. So I think that, yeah, leadership programs is one way. It's an important, it's a very good way to facilitate peer learning, and of course that should be. I believe that I think this seminar shows that there's still a huge need to continue working in this format, and hopefully also a big relevance. And I think one of many, as has been said many times also today, is we need to continue to create awareness locally if we want to be successful in localizing the SDGs. It depends on creating awareness among citizens, decision makers, showing them how the SDGs are relevant for them, and making it clear that also it is our quality of life that is at stake. So really that, I think, also shows, as has been said, that working with the SDGs, localizing them, also very much is about local democracy.
Thank you so much, Kurt. And unfortunately, we will have to wrap up this panel due to a time. And I would also thank you so much for taking the time to join in. And thank you, Radislav. Thank you, Christina and Anna and Kurt for joining and for providing support throughout the program as well. And I hope that this report that is available at Global Utmaning and that we will also send to you when it is printed can provide feedback and insights into this renewal process of the Eastern Partnership Program, into the follow-up of the Swedish Development Aid Strategy for this region, and act as a means to find priorities on how to work and cooperate between peers going forward. So thank you so very much for joining, and welcome back to the audience. And before, I know we are running out of time, but I would just like to give 2 minutes to my co-manager Krista to say a wrap up, to see what her reflections of today's seminar has been. So Krista, welcome to stage, and I will give you 3 minutes to sort of conclude and, from your perspective, takeaways from today's session. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Joel. 3 minutes. It is very, very challenging. At first, I want to highlight what has been said in this last session, that the EU proposal on the post-2020 Eastern Partnership reform actually highlights many new initiatives that are directly related to the cities and municipalities. For example, improving climate resiliency, supporting development of the local energy and climate action plans, carrying out strategic environmental assessment and urban development plans, launching EAP Green City Award, enhancing public awareness, etc., etc. So, but all those actually priority areas or topics are very much related to the local capacity to implement all those topics. And I think the success of these new priorities and initiatives depends on very much on the progress of the localizing the SDGs. And because there are 2 very important aspects here. The first is, and that was also mentioned, the capacity to take this whole governance approach, to involve all different stakeholders, and really to have tools and competencies for integrated and holistic local planning and implementation of the local policies. And secondly, of course, important is also availability of the funding for SDGs competence building and implementing the local practical projects. There are a couple of things I want to highlight. Please just tell me when I have to finish. So the first thing is that we need to keep the momentum. Report provides now a very good, let's say, departure point for follow-up activities. Also planning maybe the next capacity building and leadership programs on sustainable development. We know that it is important to work with cross-cutting SDGs because it seems that national policies in Eastern Partnership countries, and not only, are still very, let's say, SDG silo-based. And I think this is very, very dangerous, let's say, development. Secondly, it is important to measure the SDGs. It is related to data collection, but also national-local linkages when it comes to the monitoring and data. So there is a need to support the creating the workable system for that. Secondly is this planning the SDGs integration, and it is related to building whole society approach. It was mentioned that youth plays very important role, but also women engagement, but also other, let's say, stakeholders. So co-creating with people is very important aspects. And also don't forget about the power of partnerships. We don't want to lose the momentum. The cooperation on localization of the SDGs should continue. And I think the leadership program, sustainability leadership program, provides very good platform for that. And also we need support multilateral cooperation and partnerships on SDGs, like SDG twinning, also continuing sustainability leadership and collaboration between different stakeholders from different levels of the governance in the frame of the Eastern Partnership agenda, and also financing. And I think financing is a very crucial aspect. We know that there is gap between the needs and financing. There are multiple donors and multiple rules. So there should be also viability of financing. So we need to support scaling up and following up projects and actions to maintain the SDGs work and initiatives. So we really hope that today's discussions and the report we have launched today have provided some insights and food for discussions for the incoming European Eastern Partnership Summit. And we also hope that these discussions will contribute to the implementation of Sweden's aid strategy for reform cooperation with Eastern Europe, but also that it feeds into our very dear collaboration partners and donors like Swedish Institute and SIDA. So thank you very much. I found these discussions extremely fruitful, and I think it gives us very good ground for, let's say, starting planning the follow-up activities.
Thank you so much, Krista. And I would also like to take the opportunity to thank all of our participants in the program, whom I hope have joined today. It's been very rewarding working together with you, and to the Swedish Institute for providing the support to allow this program to happen. And with that, we thank you and say goodbye from Stockholm.